Ingram angle from Washington. It's great to be back again tonight. We have a fantastic lineup of stories for you. President Trump is drawing a line in the sand during his holiday vacation in Florida, telling Democrats what they're going to have to give up to get any deal on DACA. Plus, Sheriff David Clark will be here to tell us why the left needs to admit the president is actually helping minorities. Also, judges in Oregon make another controversial ruling in a case that pits a baker's religious liberties against a lesbian couple who wanted a wedding cake. And a major buzzkill from BuzzFeed, the fallout after an apparent attempt at humor falls flat over an article called, quote, 37 Things White People Need to Stop Ruining in 2018, end quote. Well, let's start with the president practicing the art of the deal even while on vacation. He gave Democrats his bottom line for any DACA deal on amnesty for the illegal immigrants called Dreamers. The president tweeted today, quote, the Democrats have been told and fully understand that there can be no DACA without the desperately needed wall at the southern border and an end to the horrible chain migration and ridiculous lottery systems of immigration, etc. We must protect our country at all costs. Can the president get the Democrats to yes, and will his own base accept amnesty? Let's discuss that with Fox News contributor Steve Cortez, a former Trump campaign operative and spokesman for the Hispanic 100, and Stephen Mulroy, a law professor at the University of Memphis and a former federal prosecutor. Happy New Year, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a contentious issue as we turn to the March 5th deadline that is out there on DACA. Professor, I want to start with you. You know, my concern is that Democrats, they like the issue. They just don't actually want to solve it. They always say, oh, we need comprehensive. We need to do all these things. The president's ask is pretty simple. Let's build a wall. Something that Democrats have supported in the past. Is it unreasonable to think that we should protect our border and build a wall?
Well, it's not unreasonable to think that we should protect our border, but we don't necessarily need to build a wall in order to do that. I mean, the actual wall itself, if it were to cover the exact complete expanse of the border, would cost tens of billions of dollars and would probably not even be effective, because what sections of wall we already have, experience has shown that you can tunnel under them or put ramps or ladders over them. So if you're going to be spending tens of billions of dollars on a wall that actually won't work and will simply alienate relations with Mexico, why not use that money in a better way by increasing border security agents and doing economic development in Mexico to reduce the demand for illegal immigration, increase guest worker programs? There are a lot more efficient, efficacious ways of tackling this problem that would not alienate Mexico, would actually work, and would be a better use of our tax dollars.
Well, Steve Cortez, the president's going to get his wall, isn't he? He's going to get the $1.8 billion that he wanted. And I don't know how he could settle for anything less. As President Obama said, elections have consequences, right? And this is one of the things the president promised he was going to do.
They sure do. And Jason, this was a pillar of his electoral mandate. And I call him President Promise Keeper, because what he did in 2017 is keep one promise after another. We are going to get that wall. And by the way, the wall's not just good for the United States. I would disagree with the professor. It's also actually good for Mexico because it has a problem on its southern border, largely because of our porous southern border. So getting our border under control between Texas and Arizona and California and Mexico is good policy. Often good neighbors need good fences, and that's what we need between the U.S. and Mexico. But more importantly, I really want to give the president so much credit for what he's already done. Even before the big, beautiful wall goes up, illegal crossings have plunged under this president. Why? Because of clear-eyed rhetoric and better enforcement. And don't take my word for it, by the way. The director of ICE, Tom Homan, said that this president has done more for border security than the 6 previous presidents combined. So he is already enhancing our economic and national security by securing our borders.
Now, Professor, you got to admit that the numbers are reflective on the reduction of the border crossing, but they're still happening. What do you attribute the lower crossing rate to be, other than the election of Donald Trump?
It's important to remember that actually immigration border crossings were actually on the decline for years prior to the election of Donald Trump. We actually now have a negative net outflow of immigration. There are more people leaving than coming in, and that was the case well before Donald Trump was elected. And as to whether he needs to keep his promise,
I got to tell you, I was the chairman of a committee in Congress, and we held multiple hearings. I would love to see those numbers where you think that we were actually on the decline with President Obama. I mean, asylum seekers, others that were coming across this border were much higher than they are today.
Well, the source that I would use right now would be PolitiFact, which actually did a recent study a few months ago on this very thing. But as to the politics of it, let's also remember that President Trump had previously agreed with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to give them DACA reform in exchange for beefed up border security without the wall. Why would it make sense for them to now negotiate against themselves and go backwards as part of the negotiations between the White House and Capitol Hill?
But, Professor, you'd be okay if it's not necessarily a physical wall, but if it went to border security. I would probably personally disagree with you that economic development in northern Mexico is, I don't know why the Americans have to pay for that. But what else? So you'd be okay, right, Professor, if it was not just a wall, but border security, and the definition of that we might want to haggle about, correct?
Right. Well, I think that actually increased border security and increased guest worker program would be a more efficient use of our tax dollars than actually building a wall, which I think will be way more expensive than we expect because of the land rights that we would have to buy through eminent domain and the fact that it's not really very effective. So I think it makes sense to talk about border security and DACA reform without the wall.
So, Steve Cortez, what else is the president going to have to get? Because there is a long laundry list of lottery, asylum reform, there's DACA. What else do you think is imperative? You've been close to Donald Trump. What do you think is imperative?
No, Jason, and here's what I think is on the way, and here's what I've told the president personally. And I disagree with some of my colleagues on Team Trump, people whom I respect. I do believe the DACA recipients, and they're not dreamers, by the way. I don't call them dreamers. Americans have dreams, too, and they're not kids. They are adults. But I believe DACA recipients are a different category of illegal immigrant, those who truly did not choose to come here because they were brought here as children. So I believe they should be protected. And again, I disagree with a lot of people I respect on that issue. But having said that, and this is what I've told the president, I believe what he will do, is we need things in return. And the big things are border security, more barricades, more resources for the border, but also, we can't just stop there, an end to chain migration. Chain migration has been a disaster for the United States. It affronts our national security. It affronts our economic security. Right now, and I'm the son of an immigrant and an Hispanic, the majority of immigrant-headed households in the United States receive some form of welfare. That's a tragedy. That's terrible policy. And it's nothing like our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents faced when they came here, when they wanted nothing from the United States other than an opportunity. So we're not doing immigration right, largely because of chain migration. That has to end. So we have to have a grand bargain, which I do believe is going to happen in January. DACA recipients protected, end to chain migration, resources at the border.
Gentlemen, thank you. Happy New Year. I appreciate you joining us in this conversation. Earlier on Fox News, Senator Lindsey Graham came on and said there was no possible way they were going to do DACA by itself, that was just political theater. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out starting in January.
Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Mike Emanuel in for Brett Baer. On this Friday before the new year, President Trump took to Twitter to warn Democrats about the agenda ahead, blasting Democrats over what he will not concede to when it comes to immigration. This as he granted an interview to the New York Times where he took a softer tone on the special counsel investigating Russia collusion, while also denying involvement more than a dozen times. Correspondent Rich Edson is at the Winter White House in West Palm Beach and joins us live with more. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Mike. And President Trump has thrown immigration issues to the Congress, and now he's telling Democrats precisely what he wants. President Trump says he'll deal with Democrats, though he has conditions. He tweeted, quote, "The Democrats have been told and fully understand that there can be no DACA without the desperately needed wall at the southern border and an end to the horrible chain migration and ridiculous lottery system of immigration, etc. We must protect our country at all cost."
I'm here today to announce that the program known as DACA that was effectuated under the Obama administration is being rescinded.
Through executive action, President Obama created DACA to protect from deportation deportation those brought to the country illegally as children. The Trump administration says it is ending those protections, arguing it's Congress's role to set immigration policy.
I have a love for these people, and hopefully now Congress will be able to help them and do it properly.
A senior administration official says that Democratic and Republican congressional leaders will meet Wednesday with White House Legislative Director Mark Short and Office of Management and Budget head Mick Mulvaney to discuss immigration, government spending, and other issues. And in a 30-minute interview with the New York Times, the president said he wants Democrats and Republicans to work together on health care and a $1 trillion infrastructure package. He also softened his approach to special counsel Robert Mueller, telling the Times, quote, "Let's just say I think that Bob Mueller will be fair, and everybody knows that there was no collusion."